Pokemon has played a big part in my gaming life. It's one of the first games that truly gripped my imagination and held on tight. I watched the anime, collected the toys and cards. I wanted to be a Pokemon trainer. I wanted to go out and capture wild animals before I realized that that's just not a good idea at all. As I grew up, the games evolved alongside me, and even though my tastes in games have changed over the years, I still find myself drawn back to the franchise I loved as a kid. But as much as I love the originals, they're nearly 30 years old at this point, and the hardware to play them on is as old, if not older. For the highest grossing franchise in the world, they're in need of a modern solution, but not just for the early generations. We need something that can bring every generation together on one device. Pokemon was the sole reason I bought a Game Boy Color. I actually originally bought a Game Boy Pocket because it was like $20 cheaper back in 1998, but after a few hours, I had that all too familiar buyer's remorse and managed to convince my mom to take me all the way back to the mall so I could exchange it for a neon green Game Boy Color. No, this is not the one I bought all those years ago, just one I bought recently to fill the void. But I have so many memories of playing Pokemon and Zelda on this thing and just hundreds of hours traveling through red, yellow, and silver, trying but never quite succeeding in catching them all. The color was a fantastically flawed device. I mean, the size was great, the color screen was obviously very worth it even to a 12-year-old, but it still lacked some niceties like rechargeable batteries, which weren't really a thing back then, and a backlit screen, which was a thing but just not something Nintendo cared about, and they wouldn't for like another 5 years. Let's face it, the best way to play Gen 1 and 2 is not on original hardware. Not the OG Game Boy, even nostalgia has its work cut out for it, and not the color. Unfortunately, that's kind of the same outcome for every generation of Pokemon. The original hardware was great when it came out, but now it's lacking in some way compared to the options we now have. Even modded consoles have their issues. A modded GBA might fix the backlight and battery issue, but it's still not the best experience out there, or at least not the best experience I'm looking for right now. These days, I find I really need the creature comforts that come from modern handhelds. Always on, sleep mode, save states, these things all help reduce that barrier to playing games I love. The DS Lite might be a great little device. I love the form factor and compact size, but that screen's just not the best, and it's limited to the Gen 3, 4, and 5 games. A lot of people seem to think a DSi XL is the best way to play DS games, but I don't have one to test out, and I just can't justify paying $100 for something just to play DS Pokemon. I'm sure they're great, they look great, but at this point, if you're buying one used, you're going to have to worry about them holding up, and about the screens yellowing, and even if they're not, those screens just are no match for what we have these days. Even with the screens being the exact resolution for the games, it's just not the best option around. And even still, a modded DSi XL can only play up through Gen 5, so there's no way something like that could ever be called the ultimate Pokemon machine. Now, a modded 3DS, it has a claim, a legitimate one. I mean, once modded, this thing can play every generation up through Gen 7, and it plays them near perfectly. Gen 1 through 3 games look great on the top screen, whether you decide to play them in full screen mode or more pixel accurate mode. But DS games, well, they do suffer from the fact that the 3DS screen resolution is so much higher. When played in full screen mode, the image is fuzzy due to the resolution differences, and when played in pixel perfect mode, well, the image is very small and leaves some unsightly gray borders along the edges. This is clearly not the best way to play DS games, especially since there are newer and better options out there. So while the 3DS really did have the right to call itself the ultimate Pokemon machine at one point in time, I don't think it does anymore. Pokemon has moved on, and this is only ever going to be able to play what it can right now, and that makes it limited. But now there's something available that pushes past those limits. The Ayn Thor, the All You Need Thor, and boy, that acronym really hits home with this device. It really is all you need to play every Pokemon game. Of course, it plays Gen 1 through 3 games well. I mean, really, what emulator doesn't these days? You can play on the top or bottom screen, so if you're looking for that retro original GBA feel or want to feel like you're playing your Gen 3 games on a DS Lite, you can do that, and without that unsightly grid pattern the DS Lite gives you. But if that's what you like, you can set up shaders to give it that DS Lite grid look, so if for some reason you prefer the low resolution screens of old, you can still sort of experience that. Me, I like it to be crystal clear, which is just what the Thor is capable of. Those very bright, very vivid OLED screens just help make these games pop in a way I wouldn't have imagined. Maybe I'm just too used to the washed out colors of the old consoles, but when you load these up, they just look so good no matter which screen you're working on. And now, the worst thing about the black version is the fingerprints everywhere. But the best thing is, you really can't tell where the bezels or black bars start when playing a game. The pure blackness of the screens just fades away, so no matter what the aspect ratio of the game you're playing, it's never a distraction with this version, and I love that because on the 3DS, they're very prominent, especially on the older generations. And with a Thor, you get that amazing emulation ability to fast forward your games. Now, I know some people might call it sacrilege to do that, might say you're just skipping through the game, but at least for me, I have limited time to play games, so I like having the ability to speed up the game when I want. Like when I'm trying to get through a cave full of Zubats, or grinding up a few levels to take on the next gym. Those aren't exactly the experiences I want to have with Pokemon these days. They're part of the game, always have been, probably always will be, but I don't need to get confused Ray by a Zubat for the 10,000th time and watch my Pokemon struggle. I just need to get through the cave. And moving on from the early generations, we see just where the Thor really shines. The whole point of buying this dual screen handheld is because of its ability to play dual screen games. With this, you don't have to sacrifice screen real estate trying to shove two screens onto one or deal with having to switch back and forth between the top and bottom screen. It's really the best device out there simply because of this ability. And again, the DS games just look amazing on here for the most part. I did have some artifacts pop up here and there, but it seems that's just a side effect of the fact that the screen resolution doesn't match up with the game resolution, so this happens, but luckily there is a simple fix for it, and with that in place, the games look better than ever. The screen resolution is so high that games on here don't suffer from the same stretching issue they have on the 3DS, and yet you still get those vibrant colors from the OLED screen that just pop in ways Pokemon never has before, except maybe on the Switch OLED screen. And if you think the DS games look great, well, you're going to be blown away by just how amazing the 3DS games look. The thing about the 3DS games is that it wasn't the games holding back the graphics so much as it was the screen. And with a much higher definition screen in place, the 3DS games can be upscale, which just gives you a much clearer picture and virtually removes the jagged edges from everything. Not only that, you can even install HD texture packages that really just take these games to the next level and make them look like something that came out in the last few years rather than something that came out over a decade ago. It's no wonder people complained about paying $60 for Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl that were basically the same game with a new coat of paint when you have people out there putting in what might feel just like as much work to give us a new coat of paint for old games for free. But I think it's safe to say that none of the 3DS era Pokemon games have ever looked as good as they'll look on a Thor. And yes, you do lose the 3D ability, sure, but let's be honest, Pokemon never really embraced the 3D aspect all that much anyway, so you're not really missing out. And still, you get the benefit of fast forwarding even on the DS and 3DS games, which is not something you get on a 3DS, modded or not. And if playing all the retro mainline Pokemon games wasn't enough, this thing isn't limited to just those. It can also play the home console games, something else the 3DS just cannot do. So you can play everything from Pokemon Snap and Stadium to Colosseum and Gale of Darkness right on this little device, and because it's Android, you can also play the mobile games. And it doesn't stop there because, well, this can play Switch games as well. So we're talking about Gen 8, 9, Legends Arceus, Legends ZA, at least the Switch 1 version, all being playable on this one device. And that's just the official Pokemon games. There are a lot of unofficial Pokemon ROM hacks out there as well, from ones that try and fix or modernize the old games like the legacy ROM hacks of Yellow, Crystal, and Emerald, to ones that give us entire new stories set in a pseudo Pokemon region like Unbound. Most of the ROM hacks seem to take their engine from the GBA era games, but there are some starting to branch out into the DS era, and so the Thor is the perfect vessel for those games. I've not really gotten into the ROM hacks yet, figure I should play every generation before venturing out into the wild, but if that's something you're interested in, well, there's a ton of options out there for you to load up on your Thor. There is just nothing out there right now that has the ability to play so many Pokemon games and to play them without compromise like this thing can, and especially at this price point. I mean, I hate to say it, but really, with the price of 3DS consoles continuing to creep up and up, it's just getting harder and harder to recommend someone taking a gamble on a 10-year-old device when something like this does almost everything better. There is one area you miss out with this, and that's access to Pokemon Home, but everything else is basically doable through emulation. You can trade these days, you can transfer from generation to generation. There's even ways to trigger event Pokemon or edit Pokemon, just like how PKSM does on the 3DS using something called PK Hex, which is available as an Android app. But if you want to take those Pokemon and move them into legitimate copies of Sword and Shield or Scarlet and Violet, well, that's where the trouble starts. It does seem like it might be doable, but it requires a modded Switch, and that's just not something I'm interested in doing right now. The easiest and simplest method is still going to be using a 3DS to transfer your Pokemon to home, but if you don't have a 3DS at this point, I doubt that's something you care too much about. If you just want to play practically every Pokemon game imaginable, this is all you need. Not only that, it oftentimes improves the experience, and it does all of it in a form factor reminiscent of a device that once upon a time could definitively call itself the ultimate Pokemon machine. Now that title is not as definitive. That's not a bad thing. It means progress, and any progress that improves upon the games we love is something we should celebrate. The original hardware will always occupy a special place in our hearts, while this can occupy a special place in our hands, at least until the Thor 2 comes out.